Oh, hold on.
Once football's
Wildcast podcast coming your way here on the Wildcast podcast, Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Apparently, we're not on Google Podcasts. We need to figure out a way to get
so
on those platforms.
okay, so I was told that that's now part of YouTube Music and that we are on there. I don't know all the technical specifications, but our guy Rob, who does a lot of our technical stuff, told me that we're good to go on YouTube Music.
Hmm.
So if you're looking for it on that platform, we should be there. That's what I've been told.
Okay. YouTube Music, hit us up. But Apple and Spotify is our prominent platform. So please subscribe, rate, and comment. We greatly appreciate that. And you can also watch the video version of this podcast on Tucson.com, where you can see us in our man caves. So, all right, Lev, we got plenty to talk about today. We got the Arizona Houston football game. Arizona beating Houston 27-3, snapping a 5-game losing skid. Everyone can take a big, deep breath at Arizona Stadium, all the players and coaches and staff members. And then you got Arizona basketball going on the road and losing to Wisconsin, and now falling to number 17 in the AP Top 25. Man, what a tough loss for the Wildcats. But and then also women's basketball going on the road and beating Chicago State too in Skylar Jones's hometown. Big week for the Arizona women's basketball team. Lauren Swan winning Pac-12 Player of the Week. Lev, tell me about her.
Freshman of the week.
Or Freshman of the Week. Freshman
Yeah.
coming off the bench, scoring in double figures in each of the last 2 games for Adia Barnes and her club.
Yeah. So Lauren Swan was kind of I wouldn't say a late bloomer. She had a lot of injuries, I guess, in high school. So her rating was suppressed a little. She kind of emerged on the ESPN Hoop Girls big board a little bit on the late side. I think she came in at number 81 or so. And the way that Adia Barnes put it was she bet on herself. She didn't make an early commitment. She held out for a big school. That big school happened to be Arizona. Looking at her, she's about 5'7", so she's not tall. I think she's a guard for sure. I saw her play some point, but she's a really good shooter. That's the thing that stands out the most. And this team needs shooting. I would say if there's a weakness on the Arizona women's basketball team, it's 3-point shooting. She's probably their best. So that is going to ensure her a role. And she's not just a 3-point shooter either. She's got really good speed. Like I said, she can run the point if necessary. And a good find. And what I think and I think PJ Brown, our colleague, she framed it this way, kind of an underestimated freshman class for women's basketball because 2 of the 3 are from Europe.
Yeah.
Maylene Rolfe and Katarina Knezovic. And sometimes, the European players don't get as much shine like in the recruiting rankings and so forth. So I think they got 3 good ones.
Arizona women's basketball is rolling right now. Arizona men's basketball, pretty interesting game, Lev. 87 combined free throws. Caleb Love also going 2 for 13 from the field, 0 for 6 from 3-point range. Kind of a wonky game. Now, we were, of course, at Arizona Stadium covering the Houston game, so we were only able to really watch the game in spurts. But I'm sure you watched the game. You had your eyes on it. Such a weird loss for Arizona, but it's early in the season. You figured, hey, Wisconsin, they got hot from 3-point range. You like what this Arizona team is capable of.
I think it's a good test and a good little sneak preview for what's to come.
Yeah.
Because that building was lit and they're going to go to a bunch of buildings that are like that in the Midwest, in the cold, and you're going to have to silence the crowd by playing well and also not get caught up in whatever nonsense is going on. Like Caleb Love, guy wagged his finger in Caleb's face. Caleb shoved him. He got a tee. He was in early foul trouble. He was off kilter the entire night. Arizona was, as a team, you could say, in foul trouble. They gave up over 100 points for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
Not characteristic of them, but they're going to face teams like this, better than this, they're going to be physical. There's going to be sellout crowds. It's not like we've talked about this before. It's not like going to Stanford or going to Cal, where the building is half full at best, and half of those fans are Arizona fans. It
Yeah.
is not going to be like that. So I think a good early and valuable test for them. And now Duke coming in on Friday, the kind of the event of the fall here on the U of A campus. So that'll be really interesting and exciting. It'll be fun to watch Cooper Flag up close and personal, the presumed first pick in the 2025 NBA draft.
Yeah, we talked about early tests. Well, they got another one coming up later this week with Duke. Man, that's going to be a tough game. And Cooper Flag was with the U.S. Olympic team, was practicing with them. I think was on like their reservation squad. The young players who are just kind of in the wings, and he was giving Anthony Davis fits. And Anthony Davis, as we talked about, Lev in the press box over the weekend, he's having a really good year. So if Cooper Flag can go out there and give some NBA pros some problems in practice, this is going to be a big test for the Toby Owakas, the Trey Townsends, and Henry Vasar and Mo Crevises, those guys.
Okay, yeah, I mean the one thing that Arizona has is a lot of size, right? They can throw a lot of different guys who are 6'8" or taller at you, including a pair of 7-footers. So it's not like they, just have to relying on one person to defend Cooper Flag. It's going to be a team effort. Duke I think they also fell out of the top 10 this week.
Yeah,
I believe. So it's not, it's not the top 10 matchup, but it's still big time, right? 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time start for that one at McHale. So it'll be a late night on Friday. Better get yourself situated there in Fort Worth, Justin.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, I don't know what the heck happened there. All right, so let's move on and talk some Arizona Wildcats football. We were at the game on Friday. While Lev was really just dialed into the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight happening on Netflix, we were watching a game on Friday. But man, what a big game for Arizona! And I think yes, is Houston's offense the worst in the Big 12? They don't score a lot of points? Absolutely. But Arizona needed to win this game. And you really felt like this was a must-win scenario for Arizona. And not only did they come in and win, but hey, they won 27-3. They won by 24 points. They went in there. They took care of business. Was it sexy? No, they had 4 3-and-outs in the first half. The offense, kind of, had its moments where it stalled out, but I thought Noah Fafita was great. He made the plays when he needed to. It wasn't his best performance, but he also made some timely plays. And I thought Quali Conley also had one of his best games as a Wildcat with a big 50-yard touchdown run. Also had a 13-yard touchdown screen too. So, Arizona, it wasn't perfect, but man, you look at the 4 fourth down stops. You look at Tyler Loop making a 62-yard field goal, setting a program record, which is a freaking robbery that he didn't get Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Week. And Lev, you feel the same way I do about that. But special teams was great, even though they had the messed up hold on a field goal. And then I thought that defense was pretty sound. And it reminded me much like the game against Utah, where the offense was not perfect, but defense and special teams, that kind of stuff is winning football.
Yeah, Houston's offense was really limited. Zion Chris is a very good athlete. He is not a very good quarterback. The drop back pass game is just not part of his arsenal. So you knew if you're Arizona, if you can get these guys into 3rd and long situations, you've got the advantage. And they did a really good job, I thought, of getting a lot of bodies around the line of scrimmage. And then you never knew what they were going to do, right? They would drop. Sometimes they blitz. They all out blitz sometimes. Sicario Davis was blitzing off the edge, which we haven't seen all season. So I loved the changeup that they threw. And I got to say, that defensive scheme, I think, could be effective against a team like TCU, even though it's a totally different offense. showing that look up at the line where all but two guys are standing up and you just don't know who's coming and who's going, I think that could work against a pass-oriented team. Completely different offense, but I
Yeah.
think that I like what I saw in that regard. It's also it's a way to compensate for not having as much size as you'd like to have. The difference with TCU is they're going to have a real quarterback, right? I mean, Josh Hoover is one of the most productive signal callers in the league. They pass the ball extremely well. One of the top passing offenses in the Big 12, and one of the least productive rushing offenses. So you got to really switch gears as far as your mindset goes. Kind of what the keys are. But like I said, I think that scheme that they used could work in this upcoming game on Saturday.
You didn't know what they were going to do. You didn't know if they
No.
were going to bring the pressure. You didn't know if they were going to drop back. I thought it was very, very crafty by Dwayne Akina. And, we saw him, try to throw some things at the wall over the last few games. And I think that Dwayne Akina maybe overthought it a little bit when, trying to, stop teams that are run heavy. And, he had this scheme that pretty much invited the run. And then he's like, okay, how can we figure out a way to stop the run, but also still be able to use the athletes we have on the field? And I think getting those guys in the box, lining up, whether they're bringing the pressure, whether they're dropping back, I think it's just a defense that you just can't really scheme around. It's very well balanced.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the fact that Noah Fafita did not have his best game. I don't think he did have his best game. He missed some open throws, ones that he normally makes.
Yeah.
Accuracy is usually one of his trademarks, but big important stat for Noah was his time. The average time to throw was under 3 seconds in this game. I think it was 2.86. The first time since the opening game of the season that it was under 3 seconds. And you want to be under 3 seconds. That is a goal. Brent Brennan said it's been a point of emphasis in practice to give him his time to throw after every play that they run. So that's been hammered home. I also think that their use of empty backfield, spreading the field, it created not only better throwing lanes and visuals for Noah, but there were some quicker plays. Like catch the ball in the shotgun, like pretty much one step and get it out.
Yeah.
And if some of those plays were blocked better, they might have even gotten more yards than they did. But again, I think that was a great wrinkle, a great changeup thrown by the coaching staff. Maybe the best offensive adjustment the offensive staff has made the whole season, to me, was going to more of those empty backfield looks.
And then Genesis Smith was the standout defensive player, and he's been a very fascinating player to watch this year, Lev, because of the position that he's been put in. And we all knew that he was going to be a guy that could really emerge this year because, I mean, he was a really good freshman last year. Had an interception in that game against Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl, was used in the dollar package a lot last year. And then came in this year, and we were wondering, like, okay, he's going to sit behind these guys once again. And then injuries happen. Traden Stukes, nickelback, goes down. Safety, Gunnar Maldonado, goes out. And we've seen him, and even when Dalton Johnson was dealing with his little bang up earlier in the season, and all these other guys were dealing with injuries too, like Genesis Smith was moved around the secondary and started at 3 different positions. And now in that nickel role, I think he's really done a fantastic job and has really emerged as probably the best defensive player for Arizona this year, I would say.
When the season was just getting started, I think the way that Dwayne Akina put it was like he's the 6th starter, right? Like he's just as good as any of the other guys. He just might not be in the starting lineup. And I think there was a world, if everyone had stayed healthy, where Traden Stukes would have moved to the outside and just played cornerback, and Genesis Smith would have been the 5th starter. That world never materialized because many of those guys got injured, and they've been playing without Traden and Gunnar Maldonado for quite some time. Marquise Groves Killebrew was banged up as well. He had some struggles a little bit against Houston, like another penalty in a situation where it looked like he was in good position, something we saw a lot in training camp. He also got beaten over the top. So that's a position to watch in this game coming up, especially if they play a lot of man coverage, which they sure did against UCF, and that did not work out very well at all. This was another game, by the way, where Takario Davis was barely targeted. I think he was targeted 2 times the entire game, and they were 0 for 2 going his way. So, I mean, again, UCF they didn't have any trouble going after Takario. It'll be interesting to see if TCU is mindful of that or if they just don't care and they just throw it wherever they're going to throw it. I got a question for you, Justin. Was that game at UCF? That was grass field. Is that correct?
That was, yes.
Yeah, I mean, this has kind of changed a little bit recently, but I think Arizona has a pretty bad record on grass fields over the years. Like they're kind of a team built for turf. I'm pretty sure TCU has turf. Most of the Big 12 teams have turf, but that's been an issue for them. Like the numbers kind of morphed a little bit because they had so much success at Colorado. They won at Stanford last year. I'm pretty sure Stanford has a grass field. But I don't know, just something interesting to keep in mind.
Man, and Arizona used to have Bermuda grass at Arizona Stadium. And until
is that back in the Mike Stoops days?
Yeah, Stoops had Bermuda grass. And then Rich Rodriguez came in and added the bear down turf. Yeah, I miss the days of the grass at Arizona Stadium. It was definitely a nice look.
Yeah, no, I've heard this.
So nice, so nice.
Yeah, and you like those uniforms in those times too, didn't you?
Yeah, with the blue helmets. Yeah, the blue helmets and the cardinal red jerseys with the blue pants. To me, that was like a very signature Mike Stoops look. By the way, interesting. Speaking of Mike Stoops, his one of his former assistants is Sonny Dykes, head coach of the TCU Horned Frogs, which Arizona will be playing this week. But going back to the game against Houston, Lev, I'm curious to get your reaction to this. People are talking about the reaction. Like Brent Brennan came in doused in water, and people were like, okay, that's a little over the top. While people may say that is over the top, I also think it says a lot about the players that are playing for Brent Brennan, because there was a lot of talk about Brent Brennan's job security this week. Like if he doesn't win this game, oh man, maybe Arizona will fire him after all, or let him go, or I don't know what's going to happen. So there was just a lot of smoke around Brent Brennan and the program in the last week leading up to that Houston game. And I really feel like this just allows Arizona just kind of take a big, deep breath. Now, we'll find out what happens against TCU in Fort Worth. The Wildcats are 11-point underdogs going into this game, but I think it was cool to see the players show great effort in this game and really celebrate their coach and just get the monkey off their back.
Hey man, they ended a 5-game losing streak. Can we let them enjoy it?
Yeah,
let them have fun. I mean, that's the whole idea, isn't it? It is hard. Look, man, it's hard to win a college football game. You know who didn't beat Houston this year? TCU. TCU played Houston on Friday night at their place, and they lost. You know who didn't beat Houston? Kansas State. So, hey man, you take your wins where you can get them. The kids deserve to enjoy it. Play it up. Like you only get so many opportunities to do this. Period. Right? Like best case scenario for a lot of these kids, like you got about 50 college football games, and for a lot of them, it's less than that, and then they will never play again. So, I say enjoy it. I have no issue, no qualms with the level to which they celebrated this particular victory.
That effort, man. I actually asked Brent Brennan about it today.
I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Tetairoa McMillan. He sees Quali Conley break off for a 50-yard touchdown. And, Quali's doing a good job getting separation from the guys and breaking for that touchdown. But you see T-Mac sprinting. downfield. Now, was it an effective block? Like, what did the guy have caught quality? I don't know. But
Doesn't matter. Yeah,
the
doesn't
fact that
matter.
T-Mac sprinted like 40 yards down the field to get in between this player and quality, like I saw that, I'm like, T-Mac, NFL scouts are going to love that. I think, again, the fact that T-Mac is still showing that great effort when he knows, like, I can walk away from this whole thing and I can still be the number 3 overall pick. Again, I think that says a lot about the culture that they have at Arizona.
Yep, there's that word.
Culture, baby.
It's really important. They talked about leading up to the game, like the brotherhood and how, they kind of knew that for this particular team, that it was coming to an end soon. So again, like there's only so many cracks at this thing. So why not, make the most of it by giving all you got?
Yeah.
Which they did. And they'll get, one extra day of rest going into the TCU game. TCU had a bye this past week, so they'll be very well rested. I'm sure they were tuned in to exactly watching every detail of the Arizona-Houston game. We won't talk too much about that game, but the one thing I'll say is that the offense better show up, because that game is not going to be 17-13.
No.
That game's probably going to be in the upper 20s, maybe even the 30s. So the offense better show up, or else they're not going to have a chance.
All right, Lev, let's get to the mailbag, shall we?
Yeah, I'll call this a mini mailbag. We only have 2 questions, but they're really good questions. They're really meaty. I think we can expound upon them for quite a bit here. I'll start with Pap, Jerome G52. Everyone wonders, this is before they ended the losing streak. Everyone wonders, is it being the 5-game losing streak in desperation for a win? 1, last year was a fluke. 2, lost too many key personnel. 3, Brent Brennan and his staff. What's your assessment, Senior Lev? I know it's a tough question, but you must have an opinion. Justin, you can start.
Did you say Senior Lev or senior?
Well, I said senior.
Oh,
I assumed he meant senior, but it could be senior. Man,
like Senior better. No, honestly, I mean, number one, he said last year was a fluke. Yeah, you can make the case that last year was a fluke, because if one injury did not happen to one Mr. Jaden DeLora, what was the path that Arizona was on? I'm willing to bet it wasn't 10-3, because they were going to lose that game to Stanford. So like, what would have happened if Jaden DeLora had stayed healthy throughout the rest of the season? Maybe Jed Fish doesn't leave Arizona. Maybe he's still the head coach, and Noah Fafita is a first-year starting quarterback, and they're still trying to figure that out. So I don't know. I always think about that, the effect of Jaden DeLora's ankle injury in that game against Stanford, and it allowing Noah Fafita to come in. And Noah Fafita was just sharp, like a total field general who actually knew how to use the weapons around him. Not only his buddy T-Mac, but Jacob Cowing, Tanner McLaughlin, all the other guys. I mean, they had great running backs. They had a first-round offensive lineman in Jordan Morgan. So I don't know. It was just and that honestly goes with his second point with lost too many personnel. There's a lot of NFL talent on that team last year, and even like fringe NFL talent, like the running backs, like Michael Wiley and DJ Williams. Jonah Coleman is one of the top running backs in college football right now. So yeah, that's really tough. And then Brent Brennan and his staff. Yeah, I think offensive play calling maybe could be a little bit better. Too many long plays. And did they make a step in the right direction by emptying the backfields and doing a lot of pre-snap motion and all that? Maybe, but I don't know. There's just a lot of things that have led up to this in the 5-game losing streak.
Yeah, if I were to rank the 3 things that he cited, I would say number 2, lost too many key personnel, would be the biggest one.
Yeah.
And then kind of maybe a tie for the other 2. And so I'll explain what I mean. So the key personnel thing, I mean, look, Jordan Morgan, first-round pick off the offensive line. Offensive line really hasn't been the same since.
No.
Difficult guy to replace. They lost an NFL drafted wide receiver, NFL drafted tight end. They lost their top 3 running backs. They lost how many defensive linemen? Was it 9?
9 scholarship.
So, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. So, we've talked about this before. I think we all kind of underestimated those losses, maybe overestimated what was returning. But we did say, like, depth is going to be an issue for this team. Like, you liked, like, the top layer, but if they suffered several injuries or key injuries to a handful of players, they could be in trouble. That's exactly what's happened. That would be like number 4 on this list, which I would have added, was the injuries that they suffered this year. Okay. So that's the personnel part of it. Was last year a fluke? I don't think fluke is necessarily the right word. I'm going to use a cliche here, but I think it's applicable. It was definitely like a lightning in a bottle situation, right? I mean, they got hot.
Absolutely.
And they kept getting hot, but they were also building up to that because, they had that great recruiting class. The recruiting class of 2022, right?
Yep.
Tetero McMillan, Noah Fifita, Jonas Avayanaya, Takario Davis, Jonah Coleman, Ephesians Prysock, Wendell Moy. I mean, go on and on and on. I mean,
Even
what
the
a
transfer portal guys.
Incredible hit rate. And you had your own transfer portal class 2 years in a row now that you could bring in, whereas that first year, they barely had anybody. You had a guy like a Jacob Cowing, who everybody wanted from UTEP, who was a star. So, I mean, was it a fluke? No, but maybe in the context of Arizona football writ large, like history, it kind of is. There's only been, I think, 4 teams in school history that have won double-figure games. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So that was one of them. So maybe a little bit. Okay. Now, Brent Brennan and his staff, we have talked about this quite a bit. I think it's pretty much all on the offensive side of the ball, not really fitting the scheme with the personnel. Like, why is Noah Fifita holding the ball as long as he is, right? Like, it's your job as coaches to get him in the right positions to succeed. Why is Tetero McMillan been kind of up and down in terms of his stats from week to week? I mean, that again, the coaching staff has got to make sure that he's the guy. Kudos to them for developing Chris Hunter as a second receiving option, but you kind of wonder, like, why couldn't this have been done earlier in the year? When still in contention for something serious. The offensive line has been kind of a mess, honestly. I'm not putting the blame on Josh Oglesby, the offensive line coach, at all. He has dealt with a difficult hand.
He's trying to make chicken salad.
It's exactly right. He is trying to make chicken salad. And sometimes that chicken salad has kind of tasted okay. And a lot of times it's kind of been kind of gross, So, I wouldn't put that part on the coaches. It's hard to find offensive linemen. And as far as the defense goes, I think Dwayne Aquina, for the most part, has made the best of a bad situation with all the injuries that they've had. The only exception would be the UCF game, where, I mean, they just kind of didn't show up. The scheme was flawed. Tackling was, that's just a bad game. That was, toss that one out. Otherwise, I feel like they've kind of kept Arizona in a lot of games that they wouldn't have been otherwise if the defense hadn't shown up the way that it did.
Missed tackles was a big improvement in the last 2 games.
Huge.
Went from 23 to 10?
10, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, tackling definitely improving over the last couple of games for Arizona. What was the next mailbag question?
Okay. This is a really good one and a good kind of it's a good segue into some stuff that's coming up here in the future. Winston Dan, W. Dan, says, Brennan's intro press conference, he said this was his dream job. Kenny Dillingham, also said the ASU head coaching position was his dream job. Do you see any similarities or differences in their styles, like community engagement and having access to players helping Dillingham? Justin, you can go first on this one.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Well, first and foremost, Kenny Dillingham actually cried at his introductory press conference. Like, he said, this is home. He's originally from Scottsdale. He's from the Phoenix area. Some of the members of his coaching staff, like he learned under when he first started coaching at the high school ranks in Phoenix at Scottsdale Chaparral. He was a Charlie Regal guy. So going back to ASU, like that was a really big deal. And he actually went to school there. Brent Brennan, I mean, Arizona can kind of claim him, but, Brent Brennan was a UCLA guy. He played wide receiver for the Bruins and then started coaching under Dick Tomey at Arizona, albeit his brother did play for the Wildcats. So, I mean, he, by association, and also his wife going to the University of Arizona, by association, that guy is a Wildcat. So, yes, both of these jobs are their dream jobs. But, I feel like Kenny Dillingham has done a really good job of marketing the program and just kind of being himself. Like he's very wacky, but again, he's unapologetically himself. And I think it has worked for ASU, the players that they were able to get in the transfer portal and, some of the guys that they've developed over the last couple of years. I think it's just worked well for ASU. Now, is this like what you talked about earlier, Lev? Is this a lightning in the bottle type of season for ASU, or can they figure out a way to bring in players and really build this up to be something special? Because, we've always talked about ASU being the sleeping giant because you're in Phoenix. You have all of the resources. You have everything you could possibly want in Phoenix. Why isn't ASU football good? Maybe Kenny Dillingham is the guy. But I do think as far as marketing, ASU has been a little bit better in that department. And, I think Arizona's learning. I think that they're going to use this season as a learning experience and move forward with some bigger and better things. I know that, Brent Brennan and Desiree Reed-Francois have been in conversations about revenue sharing and how that's going to look for Arizona. So they're trying to stay ahead of the game when it comes to that. But yeah, marketing, man, you got a top 5 pick on your team and there's no autograph session at the stadium for him. Like there were a couple things this year that I thought were kind of disappointing for Brent Brennan and his staff.
So I have several thoughts on this topic. First of all, Kenny Dillingham is younger than Brent Brennan, and younger, I think, than every other Group Power 5 coach. He was born in 1990,
Yeah.
which is crazy to think about for me anyway, that a head coach of a college program was born in 1990. So, he's coming at it from a little bit different perspective. I think he, better understanding of sort of the online world in which we all live, the social media world that the kids thrive in.
Let me
These
just
days.
say, Kenny is definitely more on Twitter than Brent Brennan.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Like, and when you win, it sets up a lot more of those viral moments, right? Like scenes from the locker room and whatnot. It's hard to publicize those kind of things when you're losing. I mean, they're not going to post a video of Brent Brennan addressing the team after their 5th consecutive loss, right? So I think that helps. He's very outgoing. He's definitely an extrovert.
Yes.
Whereas Brent Brennan, I think, is a little bit more laid back. Like he's very chill, California kind of guy. Kenny Dillingham, he's got, he's kind of got that frat boy vibe to
Yes.
him. Like you could just very easily see him being like in the crowd on college game day. And he'd blend right in.
Well, he even did
with
that
group.
after I think their game against Utah.
Yeah,
When
that's
he
right.
was
He's
the
like, I
post
was
game
one of
interview,
these
he's like,
people.
I was
Yeah.
one of them. I was
And
one of them. And
then
started
he just
jumping
jumped
up.
in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think those are some differences. He also, when he was hired was the time that you need to be hired, right? I think in early December versus mid-January. So, he's in the second year at the program. I think it's probably ahead of pace for what people thought he would be able to do, but he's had 2 full off seasons, to get into the portal, build up the roster a little bit. He found a quarterback in Sam Levitt, which is a critical piece. Of course, Arizona State did a great job of finding Cameron Scadaboo from the lower ranks, who's been, kind of the heart and soul of that team. So, big kudos to Kenny Dillingham for what he's been able to do down there in short order. They are 8-2, 5-2 in the Big 12, and they are hosting BYU this week. An absolutely monster game for both programs.
Yep.
Monster game for the Big 12 race. And BYU had a very interesting game this past Saturday, Justin. So he had to stay up really late at night to see exactly how this all unfolded. But they're winning against Kansas at home, and Kansas is kind of in that no man's land. Should we punt? Too far for a field goal, just kind of too long to go for it. They lined up as if they were going to go for it. Jalen Daniels quick kicks, beautiful little punt. It hits a BYU player in the helmet. It looked like a BYU player was going to fall on it. He failed to do so. Kansas recovers inside the 10. They score. They take the lead, and they win on the road at BYU, the first team to knock off the Cougars this year. So now you've got 6-1 BYU, 6-1 Colorado, 5-2 Arizona State, and 5-2 Iowa State vying for the spots in the Big 12 title game. I'm sure maybe some of these 4-3 teams are still alive, but they're really on the outside looking in. It's really down to those four. And man, what a huge game up in Tempe. We'll get to our Big 12 bonanza later in the week, but it's going to be hard to pick against ASU, knowing what the crowd's going to be like and how much momentum they have going into that game.
I thought that this could be the Bourget Bowl, Trent Bourget versus Trayson Bourget, but they'll both be the backup quarterbacks sitting on the bench in that game. But yeah, I mean, big game for ASU. And you know what, Lev? I'm manifesting this. I'm putting this out into the universe, and maybe it could happen. Let's say Arizona does beat TCU. I know it's a tough feat, 11-point underdog. That's a really hard thing to do. But let's just say, hypothetically, they do beat TCU.
Mm-hmm. I know where you're going with this. Yep.
Let's say ASU beats BYU. So you mean to tell me that we have a territorial cup game where if Arizona wins, they go to a bowl game? Or if ASU wins, not only do they keep Arizona from going to a bowl game, but they also punch their ticket to the Big 12 championship game.
Boom. This is what we want. This is what we want. We want the drama. I think that, all of those hypotheticals that you just talked about, that's the reason that none of the Saturday games on November 30th have start times yet. They're going 6-day picks. With the Saturday slate, there are 2 Friday games the day after Thanksgiving, Oklahoma State at Colorado and Utah at UCF. But the rest, we'll see, because you don't know what's going to be at stake for some of these squads, especially BYU, ASU, and Iowa State, which hosts Kansas State, which I don't know what happened. I don't know what's happened to Kansas State, man. That was my pick to click this week for them to beat and cover against ASU, and ASU took it to them. In a major way in Manhattan. So there's one more thing I want to talk about, Justin. This is really interesting, right? So Arizona's game this week against TCU is on ESPN Plus. I wonder if this is the last time we will see Arizona football on ESPN Plus, because a deal has been reached between Warner Brothers Discovery and ABC, ESPN, Disney regarding NBA content. Okay, if you remember, Warner Brothers Discovery, which owns TNT, they lost the NBA rights in this last round of negotiations, but they filed a lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, they ended up making a trade, if I'm understanding this correctly. Warner Brothers Discovery gets some inventory of Big 12 games, including, I think, 13 football games and 15 men's basketball games. And ESPN gets Inside the NBA, the show that we all love on TNT. It's going to be part of their programming now on that network when the NBA goes over there. So the upshot for us here in the Big 12 is that there's going to be more games on linear TV, more games on cable, on TNT or maybe TBS or True TV or who knows. But I think there's certainly a segment of our audience that will be very happy about that.
Yeah, because, I mean, I got YouTube TV, and it honestly kind of sucks when a game is on ESPN Plus, because, man, when I watch games on college football Saturday, or, even on Sunday for the NFL, I have the
Quad
4
box.
screen view, the quad box. And I love that. I know, some people they have to focus on one game, but I love watching all the different games at once. You don't get that luxury on ESPN Plus. You have to watch one game, you got to go to a different app, the ESPN app. And while it is great, like I love ESPN Plus. I think it's totally worth every penny, right? But I prefer the games to be on linear TV. So having that option to go on TNT or TBS or some of these other platforms, man, I think this is great for the Big 12. And honestly, it's Brett Yormark utilizing his connections in that realm, right? He used to operate with media. I think he did work for TNT. Uh, don't quote me on that. But he did work in the NBA because he worked with the Brooklyn Nets. He helped get the deal for the Brooklyn Nets to go over to Barclays Center. So Brett Yormark has connections in that realm, and I think that's definitely good for the Big 12 to get that deal. Man, it's going to be cool. You can see, like you said, Lev, this could be the last time we see Arizona on ESPN Plus because, a big conference game, I feel like this would be a game that goes on TNT, especially in the middle of the afternoon. What else is TNT playing, right? They're probably playing the Terminator at this time on a Saturday. So throw on a Big 12 football game.
Yeah. So this does not apply to women's basketball, baseball, or softball, or any of the quote unquote, Olympic sports, all of which will still continue to air on ESPN Plus. There will still be men's basketball games involving the U of A that are on ESPN Plus because, when they play Canisius or Old Dominion or whatever, those games, those aren't the games that TNT is going to want. They're going to want the conference games where there's just too many games to air on ESPN or Fox platforms. I think CBS Sports Network might also have some Big 12 games. So, we always have the listings and are attached to our stories. Also, if you go to the ArizonaWildcats.com, they always have the TV or streaming information on their schedule pages. So that's a good place to find it. I agree with you. I think ESPN Plus is still a good deal because, like, I'm a Chicago Blackhawks fan, and almost every Blackhawks game is on there. Like, tons and tons of college games, NHL games. They have MLB games during the season. I am not trying to be a spokesman or advocate for ESPN Plus. They're doing just fine without me, but I do think that it's worthwhile if you're a big sports fan, if you're a big Arizona fan, to get that in addition to having some sort of YouTube TV or cable or satellite package.
I'm just happy that the band is still staying together with inside the NBA.
Totally.
During NBA Finals coverage, like that to me, that's the biggest win of all this because that's the best live.
I kind of enjoy that show more than the games sometimes.
Yes.
Like I will literally just turn on, like on a Thursday night, I'll just turn on the post-game show after the game is over just to hear them chopping it up because I don't know, there's just nothing like it.
It's the best. All right, so that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast. That is Michael Lev, senior writer and columnist for The Star. I am Justin Spears, Arizona football beat writer. We appreciate you guys for listening and watching. Check us out on Apple and Spotify and YouTube Music now, apparently. So check us out on those platforms. Subscribe, rate, and comment, and also find us on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster mobile app.